11 most complained about Jeep Gladiator things. Some of these are just downright petty. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Rob Motive JT. I want to run through the 11 most complained about things about the Jeep Gladiator. And that's right, some of them I think are downright petty or picky at the least. Number one, the Jeep Gladiator bed is small. Well, no kidding, it's not a full-size truck, right? The complaint is that you can't haul motorcycles or bicycles in it without putting down the tailgate. Well, again, it is a mid-sized truck, and obviously if you're looking to be able to put big things back there, you probably bought the wrong truck if you're complaining about it being too small, the bed that is in the Jeep Gladiator. Another complaint is that you can't sleep back there because it's only a little over 5 feet in length. And I think most people, well, not most people, well, a lot of people are over just a little bit in 5 feet in length, right? So you can't lay back there and stretch out your arms and your legs. You're not going to have enough space. Now, if you're closer to the 5 foot mark, maybe you can sleep diagonally, edge to edge. But again, it's not a full-size truck. A pretty petty complaint, I think. Next up, the Jeep Gladiator front seating can be cramped. Now, this depends on your height. I mean, if you're 6'6", I would say almost any vehicle you get in, unless it's a giant truck or SUV or maybe a Hummer or something, is going to be a bit cramped. But if you're of average height, which these days is about 5'9" in the United States, you're not going to have trouble with that. Again, I would state that it is a mid-sized truck. And obviously, if you are vertically gifted, you're probably going to have problems in any vehicle. This is a complaint that I think it's funny to hear because I hear it often. People that are vertically gifted talk about the truck being so small. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's like trying to jam yourself into a 5 foot long bed and then complaining that your feet hang off the edge. I mean, you're a tall person. If you're buying a mid-sized truck, given your height advantage or disadvantage, you're probably going to have troubles. I don't think this is a fair complaint. Know what you're buying. Next up is towing with the Jeep Gladiator. It's rated to tow somewhere between 4,000 and 7,000 pounds, depending on the trim level that you have. If you have the max tow package, you can get as high as 77,650 pounds. Now, there are complaints out there about fuel economy, that when you're towing something with the Jeep Gladiator, you're going to see reduced fuel economy. Some people have stated as low as 10 miles per gallon. Well, I would say, of course. I mean, any truck that you use to tow with is going to drop when you're hauling something on the back. And as far as what you're towing with the Jeep Gladiator, you have to use some common sense, stay within reason. I mean, you're not going to put a 30-foot travel trailer behind the Jeep Gladiator and expect it to do well. Nor would I ever recommend that. I don't care what the tow rating is. The Jeep Gladiator only has so much weight to it. When you put some big heavy thing behind it, you might get a little bit of this with what is in front of it. Obviously, the fuel economy is going to drop. I think that should be expected, and I don't really believe that's a valid complaint. Is it 10 miles per gallon? Yeah, I kind of doubt that. But of course, it depends on where you're hauling or towing. I mean, if you're going up and down in the mountains, yeah, you're probably going to see a substantial drop. But on a fairly flat road, I think you'll probably see somewhere between 13, 15 miles per gallon, something like that. Next up, the Jeep Gladiator rear suspension is soft. Well, again, it kind of depends. The manufacturers kind of have to walk a line, right? You don't want it too firm because when you don't have a load, it's going to be bouncing all over the place because it's too tight, it's too firm. You don't want it too soft because when you load it up, the bed's going to sag. So it's kind of dependent, again, on what you're putting in the truck. There are aftermarket things you can add, airbags, beef up the suspension, whatever, depending on what your needs are. Again, and I keep going back to this, if you're hauling heavy loads, the Jeep Gladiator or any mid-size truck is probably the wrong vehicle for you. You need to get something that can handle what the job is that you're asking it to do. Jeep Gladiator fuel economy is subpar. Well, here we go again. It depends on what you're doing with the truck. You know, usually you can get somewhere between 20 and 23 miles per gallon on an unmolested truck. That means you don't go in and change the suspension and put big heavy tires on it and throw a bunch of stuff in the back or add a bunch of mods that add weight to the truck. Now, one of the arguments is that if you run it above 80 mile an hour for long periods of time, the fuel economy is going to drop. Well, of course it is. I mean, if you run it at 120, you're going to get less fuel economy, right? Now, they say that just a little bit over 80 is about 18 miles per gallon, so you can lose about 5 miles per gallon or something like that. But let's face it, the harder you run the truck, the more fuel it's going to require. I mean, isn't that common sense? Another one of these that I really don't think is a fair knock on the Jeep Gladiator. Next up, Jeep Gladiator air conditioning is not very effective. This one I find kind of funny because what they're talking about is with the top down or the top off. In other words, you're out cruising around, you're in high humidity, it's bright sunshine, it's 100 degrees outside, and the air conditioning is not very effective. Well, go figure. You're sitting in an open vehicle with all of that heat and humidity around and the sun beating down on you, and you expect the air conditioner to be able to keep you nice and cool in there? It's not gonna happen. You're better off to stay at speed and have the wind blowing through your hair, if you have any. But it's not going to be very effective with the top off. I mean, this is common sense again. Now, one positive thing that was noted is that when you're driving, the air conditioning is more effective. Well, I would say that's true. You're running the truck, you're revving it up, you're giving a little more oomph to the air conditioner, and it would be better. You also have the wind blowing. I mean, it makes sense, right? Kind of a dumb thing to look at as far as having the top off and rating the air conditioner. I mean, really? It'd be like in the wintertime, driving around with everything off and saying you're cold. Of course you're going to be cold. You got the top off. This next one, I fully agree with. Jeep Gladiator auto stop is annoying. I think auto stop in any vehicle is annoying. Although, let me point out, did take a trip recently, had a GMC Terrain. And the auto stop system in that truck, because it did have it, was almost seamless. When that truck would restart, you hardly even knew it. I was even questioning whether or not it actually had it. They have a fantastic system. Now, the auto stop system in the Gladiator, it's not so good. You definitely can tell when it restarts. You can tell when it shuts off. And it is very annoying. I couldn't agree more with that. Now, there is a button that you can push to turn it off. The problem is you have to do that every time you restart the truck because it resets to the default, which is auto stop on. Why manufacturers aren't giving us the option to permanently disable it if we want, I have no idea. I mean, after we buy it, they've done their job. They've got their government ratings as far as emissions. Some people say it's for fuel economy. I don't believe that. I think it's all about emissions. That's why the truck shuts off. Horribly annoying system. Can't stand it in any vehicle, Jeep Gladiator or not. Next up, and this one, I kind of agree with this one too. The Jeep Gladiator hardtop creaks and leaks. I agree with part of this. When I had the hardtop on my Gladiator, it did creak. I mean, I could hear it moving around, and it makes sense. I mean, they're just held on by some little clamps in there that you move around with rubber gaskets in between to keep the water out. Mine did creak. I now have the Sunrider soft top, so I don't have that issue, although I can hear the canvas moving on that. So it depends on how picky you are. I mean, it's an open top vehicle with a top put on. Of course, you're going to have sounds. Now, the leak part they talk about. I never experienced any leaks with the hard top on. I've talked about some leaks I've had with the truck parked backwards on an incline or decline, and I've gotten some leaks in the back. but nothing as far as leakage with the hard tops on. So I disagree with that part. Next up, Jeep Gladiator fender flare clips break. Now this is interesting because I was not aware of this myself. Did you know that the fender flares on the Jeep Gladiator are designed with clips to break off if there's any impact? In other words, if you're out doing some off-roading and you're up against something that's hard, something that's going to put pressure on those fender flares, the clips are designed to break so that you don't damage the fender flares or the metal fender area itself. I was not aware of that, and I think that's a pretty cool idea. The problem lies within how sensitive they are. Apparently, they're too sensitive. When you go over hard bumps, off-roading, and maybe you put a lot of stress or a big jolt to those fender flares, the clips can break. That's a problem, obviously. I mean, if you're not hitting anything and you're just driving around, you don't want your fender flare to fall off. Then you got to screw with that because the whole thing's not going to fall off, right? 2 or 3 clips are going to break and then it's going to be hanging there. Now you have a problem. The suggestion is to buy extra clips so that on the fly, if you're out cruising around, you can go ahead and re-clip it. Probably not a bad idea. And this is one of those things where you get what you want, but you don't want what you get. You don't want your fender flares to break, but you don't want to have to be screwing with them when they shouldn't be breaking off, those clips that is. Next up, and this is lastly, the Jeep Gladiator rear storage is limited. It's a Jeep. I mean, obviously, and they're talking about in the rear behind the front seats. In other words, the passenger area. I mean, you can pop the seats forward. There is a little bit of storage behind them. It's not a whole lot. And then if you have the storage compartment underneath the seats, you can pop them up and put some stuff back there. I really disagree with this one. I don't find it to be overly limited as compared to other mid-sized trucks. I have the Toyota Tacoma, I have the Hyundai Santa Cruz, and I think they're relatively equal when it comes to that, as long as you have the under-seat storage compartment. Again, it's a mid-sized truck. If you're gonna haul the kitchen sink in there and everything else, you'll probably need something bigger. Anyway, I just wanted to run through those real quick. Those are 11 of the most complained about things with respect to the Jeep Gladiator. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think of this list. Do you agree with these things or not so much? I'd be curious to know. Also, real quick, I do have 2 additional channels. Rob Motive, all about Toyota Tacomas, and Rob Motive MT, all about compact trucks or mini trucks. Check them out, and if you're interested, why not subscribe? Thanks for watching. Stay reasonable out there. Bye.